Tune in to Backstory and Beyond, hosted by Northwood Retail President and industry expert Ward Kampf. With over 30 years of experience, Kampf has a unique ability to identify game-changing businesses and forecast trends. Follow him as he chats with trailblazing leaders and disruptive founders, sharing their stories and uncovering the best practices that set them apart from their industry peers. Listen on Spotify, Apple, Google, or your favorite podcast platform. Don't miss this Northwood Retail podcast.
Well, your resume is impressive, but what would you say is your greatest weakness?
I daydream constantly about living by the water. The warm sun, in a dynamic city, with amazing food and craft breweries, weekend events.
Okay.
With tons of jobs, less stress, awesomely affordable neighborhoods.
It sounds glorious.
Stop daydreaming and get to Tampa Bay for high-wage jobs in finance, tech, and more, all under the warm Florida sun. Find Florida's most bright opportunities at makeitTampaBay.com.
Welcome to California in Focus. I'm David Mastio. Today we're talking about something new for the foodies in San Francisco. Joining me today is the Center Square's Kenneth Schrupp, our California reporter. Kenneth, there's a new market in San Francisco. Tell me about it.
Hi, David. San Francisco opened its first $5.5 million food empowerment market where approved residents can show a benefits eligibility card like at Costco, put what they want in their carts, check out, and walk out without paying. This is a limited program meant for residents to cover their food needs sort of at the end of the month after food stamps have run out. It's designed as a supplemental program. And you have to have a number of qualifications like living in one of 3 zip codes, have to be verified social services clients, have dependents under 25 or a qualified food-related illness like obesity, and be referred by one of 11 community service organizations. But it replicates the normal shopping experience, except that you're not paying for the food. They have fresh produce from a local farmers market quality ranch on the shelves. There's this picture that the San Francisco mayor posted of these, bok choy, onions, fresh, sitting on the shelves. It is an expensive program, to be sure, but with no one in their right mind opening a low margin, high capital grocery store in what is a high crime area, this might be the only option.
So if high crime affects grocery stores, why doesn't high crime affect a free grocery store? Don't the criminals just come in and steal the food there too? Or is that not what happens at grocery stores in San Francisco?
Well, it is true that grocery stores, as I said, they're very low margin businesses. So if you need a lot of capital to sustain a low margin business, and theft can destroy what little margin you have, then you're not going to open a store. I spoke with the woman who spearheaded this initiative at the San Francisco Supervisor's Office before being hired as a consultant to help start this market. She talked about how lots of food chains have come in and left the neighborhood in her lifetime. And if you look at crime statistics, it does seem like theft is really one of the drivers of this. And yes, in much of San Francisco, it does seem like it really is easy to just walk in and shoplift and leave without having to face any consequences.
Why is it important to replicate the supermarket experience for people on social services?
What I have been told is some people think that it takes away the shame and stigma of being on social services. The organizer, Joffrey Morris, who spearheaded the program, did say that one of the big things they were trying to go for that was different from typical food pantries is being able to A, better track inventory, and B, have fresh produce, because food pantries usually don't have any fresh produce. If you do look at a map of the area, I believe there's only like 1 or 2 grocery stores in the entire neighborhood, or they're very small outlets, and it's not really clear whether they'll stay in business for much longer.
How bad is the crime in that area?
Does seem to be a fairly high property crime rate. Let me give you two data points, 2019, 2024, because I don't think if you look at the 2024 data alone, you see the whole picture. In the first 6 months of 2019, the area had reports of 143 robberies, 129 assaults, 195 burglaries, 308 motor vehicle thefts, and 889 larceny thefts. In the first 6 months of 24, there were 78 reported robberies, 128 reported assaults, 174 burglaries, 353 motor vehicle thefts, and 431 larceny thefts. Given that the number of assaults and motor vehicle thefts have remained fairly constant, business leaders do say that it seems like the reduction in reported larceny probably is likely due to fewer reports being made because there isn't as much prosecution for the crime. I spoke to Matt Ross, the communications director for Californians Against Retail and Residential Theft, and he had this fairly damning quote. He said, "We know that there is underreporting. Since Prop 47 was passed, murder, rape, and robbery increased by more than 20%. Same holds true for motor vehicle theft, which is up 19.8% since the passage of Proposition 47. The only significant drop is burglary at 30%. So either California is doing an amazing job at stopping burglary when every other crime stat is on the increase, or there is underreporting."
So clearly the crime is not going away and the need for this market will still be there. What comes next after this $5.5 million is spent?
Well, I imagine that they'll continue supplying this establishment, on a per individual served basis. It could ultimately end up being a low cost program. But the secondary effect of this is who is going to open the market in an area first where there is a high amount of crime, so you're just going to have your goods stolen for you, and B, you now have to compete with free food. No one's going to want to come in and open stores in these areas, and that is to the detriment of these local customers. I looked at the density of the area, and it's rather high. There are a large number of people living in the Bayview-Hunters Point area. So the area could, in theory, support many grocery stores, but crime does seem to be the factor. Again, these free food markets will mean that there's even less incentive for anyone to come in and open a store.
Kenneth, thanks for joining us today. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com.
Tune in to Backstory and Beyond, hosted by Northwood Retail President and industry expert Ward Kampf. With over 30 years of experience, Kampf has a unique ability to identify game-changing businesses and forecast trends. Follow him as he chats with trailblazing leaders and disruptive founders, sharing their stories and uncovering the best practices that set them apart from their industry peers. Listen on Spotify, Apple, Google, or your favorite podcast platform. Don't miss this Northwood Retail podcast.
Well, your resume is impressive, but what would you say is your greatest weakness?
I daydream constantly about living by the water, the warm sun, in a dynamic city with amazing food and craft breweries, weekend events.
Okay.
With tons of jobs, less stress, awesomely affordable neighborhoods.
It sounds glorious.
Stop daydreaming and get to Tampa Bay for high-wage jobs in finance, tech, and more, all under the warm Florida sun. Find Florida's most bright opportunities at makeitTampaBay.com.